welcome you foremost to the launch of this book, By My Beloved Country. My name is Ho Fang, and I'm the publisher of Ethos Books, the company which published this book by Chisan. New faces here to me. Usually, when we launch our books, the group of people are very different. And so my group of people who came today asked me, why is it that we are launching this book in a Volvo showroom? And actually I thought about it, and I said, well, most times we launch at bookstores, we launch at the arts house, but only because of the nature of this, the nature of the content of this book, I thought it was appropriate, and Chisan thought it was appropriate too, that we hold it here, because this book is really about, should we sell our country? And if we sell our country, there's lots of money in it for us. Maybe we should take a look at some of the Volvos and buy a couple of cars. I don't know. Anyway, that's a joke, yeah. But I want to welcome you again once more to this launch book. I think this book is really one of the more interesting books that we have published because of the reality. You know, when we look at novels and stories, usually we look at it and say, oh, this is fiction, you know, and so we just put it at the corner of our brain. But this particular book, you can look at it and say it's fiction. Yet at the same time, because of the arguments it raised, because of the basis by which Chisan has used, the basis that he has used in his arguments, we tell ourselves that it can become very, very true. And this is where, I mean, we know our country, right? You know, when I raise this issue, this topic with some of my friends, happening in our country, I won't review I can't use the word plot anymore, but I won't review the story too much. I'll just leave it to Chisan to carry on from here and to enthrall you with the story that is in this book. Right? Chisan?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Let me first of all say that I've written a lot of things as a newspaper man, but this book was not written by me. Well, the ideas came from many people. One of them, Victor, at the back there, Doc's another one here, and a few of the people who will see on the video. How did it come about? Victor, my classmate in RI, is a great thinker, and he came up with all kinds of ideas on how can we secure the future of Singaporeans. And he liked to talk about it to the rest of us classmates. And the arguments got so heated. They said, can it be true? So finally we said, okay, get somebody to talk about it. The more I looked at Victor's notes, and the more I started to research it, and the more I looked at some of the videos of the arguments made for Singapore, I said to myself, hey, is this a safe place? So I will let some of these people speak for themselves first before I continue speaking. Debbie, could you start the first video? The pictures are not very much to look at, but you will know the people involved, okay, and the people in these videos. The last 700 years of Southeast Asian history, no small state has lasted more than 100 years. Not my words, Canton Sing's words, and he should know. Now, let's hear what something happened just as we're putting the finishing touches to the book. So let's have the next video.
They're halfway over here.
It's being sold already.
The second video.
The crunch. Treaties are only meaningful if you have the ability to enforce them. Ukraine cannot defend the treaty, and has no partners which will come to its aid. And I mean with deeds, not just words. Then the treaty by itself will not help Ukraine. Lesson number 2 in international relations: size matters. The disparity between big and small countries is fact of life. And a small country which cannot protect itself puts its sovereignty and its people at risk. Russia is vastly bigger than Ukraine.
Now started us thinking about the book. We said we've got to think of the future of Singapore. Where do we go from here? And all the problems that Singapore is facing have been stated by people much more qualified than I am to talk about them. Now, I have to thank this gentleman in front row here for saying, let's don't politicize anything. Let's approach this subject with a very open mind. So, what I've done in this book is to approach all the questions that are relevant to Singapore, all the things that are likely to happen. Are all the arguments from the past still relevant, or should we have thrown them aside and say we don't use them anymore? After all, in 1961, they said we should be part of a larger entity. So, must it be the entity right next to us? Can't we be part of a larger entity further away from us? And being part of a larger entity, it doesn't mean that we're less Singaporean. I mean, a Texan is very much a Texan, as well as an American. A Californian is a Californian. A Hawaiian, well, my family has got members in Hawaii. There's still very much Hawaiians, even though they are part of the USA. And a New Yorker is more different, I think, from a fellow from the Great Plains than a New Yorker is different from a Singaporean, because we're all from cosmopolitan people. So Victor and myself, we started talking about these ideas, and we came up with all kinds of possibilities. And we put these possibilities into a book. And this book studies some of the historical things that have actually happened in Singapore, and asks questions about what lessons can we learn from them, and how can we extrapolate some of them to see where we can take Singapore to in the future. Maybe not for people like myself. Ho Fang here is almost 60, I'm almost 70. But let's get the grey matter working for the new generation, for the people to whom it matters. For people like this young lady here who, when we put this question to her, she was helping us to edit the book. And she and her friends said, no, they're very staunchly Singaporean, they're not going to sell. Well, it's good to know that Singapore is the future with young people like them. But will their future be secure? Will what happened in the Crimea happen to us? Will the 9-line get a bit longer and come and become an 11-line or 12-line into our place? So how can we make ourselves safe? Treat this subject with an open mind, treat it as a brainstorming session, treat the book as a starting point, and as Mr. Lee Kuan Yew says, it's not his future, it's your future or your children's future. And well, in the brainstorming session, you try any ideas. So let's see if we come up with any ideas and see which one works. Okay, that's all I have to say at this point in time, ladies and gentlemen. Any questions?
Yeah, I think maybe just to give a very quick synopsis of the book, essentially what Tristan has done is that he makes a proposition that because of all the problems which face us in the past, because of all the things that our leaders are saying, that size matters, that immigration matters, that we need new people, we are not reproducing fast enough, and so on, and therefore the future for Singapore seems very bleak. So what he has come up with is, well, if that is the case, in the past we used to say, we used to believe very strongly that we should be part of Malaysia, right? And in fact, we were part of Malaysia until 2 years later we left, or we had to leave. Right? And so he puts forward, what happens if the US were to come to us and say, look, for various reasons, why don't you become the 51st state of the United States of America? Is there anything wrong with that? I'm not advocating that, I'm just saying that these are questions that being thrown out, right? Of course there will be views, right? What's wrong with being the 51st state? I mean, for example, okay, people will say, why would the US want to buy us? There are reasons for that. Very good reasons. China is spreading its wings, and emerging China is getting stronger and stronger. The US, of course, will not stand by and let that happen. Understandably so. Why not establish a base? Okinawa is going to be finished. Subic Bay is also going soon. If somebody comes and says, Singapore, why don't you become the 51st state of the United States of America? American citizenship, everybody gets $1 million in the pocket, every citizen, man, woman, and child, would you sell? You keep your system of government, you have your own governance, one country, two systems, China, Hong Kong, would you sell? Now, I'm not advocating that we should sell. I'm just saying that these are the questions that I'm going to ask. So for those of us who feel that, no, we should not sell like my friend, though, because we defend the country, we did NS, we should defend the country. Yeah, but there are problems. Size matters. Right? Our children, we've got to think about our children. Our children's children. If we want to say, yes, it cannot be just an emotive thing. Oh, no, we will defend Singapore to the last drop of blood. What else must we do if we want to do that? Should the government not? I mean, because if you look at it from a purely economic basis and a survival basis, it makes great sense. Money. And this is what Singapore has been brought up along with, right? Money, economics. This is what Singapore is about. So if that's the case, why don't we just sell? But if we say no, there's a sense of identity, there's a sense of being Singaporean. What are the triggers? What are the points that are important to make us want to do this and do this well? So these are questions that are open for discussion. If there's yes?
Are you sure there's a buyer?
Are you sure there's a buyer? The US comes along, and this is where the book explores that idea. It's saying that, look, Subic Bay is gone, Okinawa is going, I need a base in this part of the world to, well, I'm going to use the word, contain China. Yes?
I'm Betty, and I speak as an environmentalist and ecologist who watch you knows. And I believe we've sold our country a long time ago. We've sold our country to the multinationals. The multinational corporations are much richer than any government. And if we think that that's going to put food on our table, in fact, we are crazy. Look at the model of Cuba. Cuba showed when they were part of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union collapsed. Overnight, they had no oil, because America imposed an embargo. What did they do? They ran back into their own resources. They started to plow the land and grow their own food. This is what we need to live. Even $1 million, how long is it going to last? If everywhere else, haven't you all read about the lack of food security now with climate change? Aren't you aware of this?
Okay.
Okay, Betty, you know that I'm very involved in urban farming for the government, okay? I volunteer at the Kutekpot Hospital, and we're trying to grow our own food, grow our own fish. Kwachu is one of the other advisors to the hospital. Kwachu knows what we do there. And all these are ideas that can be put into practice. But we're not just talking about food security, okay, or water security. We're talking about the total security of this country. What happens if somebody comes with guns? How defensible is Singapore? So please don't get it wrong that I'm advocating we sell the US. The subject of this book is what happens if the big powers or bigger powers come and they make us an offer we can't refuse. What's the sensible thing to do? I quote another learned gentleman formerly from the Singapore government, who since lost his job, Mr. George Yeo. He says, look, Singapore has got a very cold-blooded attitude to foreign policy. We have to be very cold-blooded to ensure our survival. These are George Yeo's own words. So I think the first rule of anything else, of preserving the environment and others, Betty, is the first rule is you've got to be alive to do it. So I'm exploring this argument in this book from first principles. How are we going to stay alive to do what we want to do? Right?
Just a bit of it. I heard Singaporean is not very wise.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not true that Singapore is sold out to the MNCs. Singapore is a very big corporation by itself. So it is right for to be rated. Forget to be sold. Okay,
maybe the citizens have already sold our souls.
I'm not Singaporean.
One of the very senior gentlemen from our government-linked companies is in this room. In fact, more than one of them. So we can carry on the debate with them afterwards. Right?
Any response? Anyone? Yes.
I think having listened to you, I think perhaps there's something missing here.
Yes, yes.
Is that having been in the Economic Development Board and seeing Singapore go through all the phases from labor-intensive, skill-intensive, knowledge-intensive, and so on. You see, our policy is to get all the multinationals to come to Singapore. In a way, we are selling Singapore. We don't have our own Singaporeans in high positions, right? We are prepared to work for the multinational companies in that sense, right? Because we have no products of our own. We don't have the design. We don't have the R&D. R&D may be much longer, but you look at Steve Jobs, or America, they come up with all the leading. They are changing the whole social fabric of the economy, right? We have no control, Singaporean, except, there could be one exception, there's the road building industry. We are still number one, but the question is that we could, because we rely so much on foreign labor, that we also, face a danger that even the industry may collapse. The disc drive industry has already collapsed, right? We were once known as the nation of drives,
Yes.
But where the disc drive industries? Because we are not in control. We never, have people at the top. Even I wouldn't mention the name. One former chairman of EDB said that it's all right. No, we just invite the foreign companies in. In a sense, we are selling Singapore, right? They come if they're not successful, they just leave. That's a danger. If you are selling Singapore, right? Are you sure Singapore still survive? That's the question.
Okay. It's not just a question of will Singapore survive. It is a question of each and every individual Singaporean. If this piece of rock that we are standing on sinks into the sea, how are we going to rescue all the people? So we are exploring not the survival of a piece of real estate. We're talking about the survival of people. And this is the question I'm raising in this book. True, Singapore became very successful partly as an accident of history. Long before 1959, this area was already a very bustling entrepot port. And in fact, as early as 1800s, why did Raffles want to come here? Because it's a good place. But technology
The cell is opium.
But technology can mess us up. At the moment, we are a first-class air hub. We are building Changi Terminal 1, Terminal 2, Terminal 3. 4, yeah. And Jewel and all that sort of thing. The way aviation is going, maybe you don't need a hub. We were very lucky that two fellows, as Lee Hsien Loong said, two places which were equally good or even better than us as hubs, they dropped the ball. You could have had a hub in KL, you could have had a hub in Bangkok, but they dropped the ball. So we are the hub. Maybe the longer flying jets, the long distance jets next time may not need to stop here. They can go straight. Now, we are at a very important port now. There's global warming. The ice is melting, up there. Already, this year, 4 or 5 ships have made the trip across the Arctic Ocean. In other years, think if you're a naval architect, you should know. In other years, if global warming continues at the same rate, maybe they'll say, hey, from Okinawa, from Japan, we just go straight to Europe instead of coming down here. It could happen, so we don't know. So, how do we ensure the survival of Singaporeans? That's the question Or those are the questions I'm putting in the book. I'm not recommending answers. All these are imaginary. All my too wild imagination. But think about it. What can we do? If this piece of rock sinks under the sea, global warming raises the sea level by another 30 feet, in which case the showroom will be underwater. So, have I answered your question?
No, the question is, somebody may buy Singapore,
Yeah.
but will Singapore survive?
Will Singapore
Survive.
No. Will Singapore survive as a nation or will Singaporeans survive as a people? Thank you, Kong Hua. Yeah. Yes, Eric.
Kisan, I think your book, not having read it, but I think from the synopsis,
Yes.
sounds quite fascinating in your perspectives. So certainly I'll buy a copy of it. I think, however, the critical issue that you've, I guess, which belies your entire approach is economics.
Yeah. It's survival.
Yeah, economics, but based on economics.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably something that is a problem in the world itself. Everybody thinks about how we're going to survive, how we're going to do this, how we're going to do that. It's all about values. And I think at the end of the day, we as a nation or as individuals within the country have to decide what kind of values are most important to us. If we measure ourselves as successful if we survive economically, if we thrive economically, then of course we can do certain things. But if we have other standards, other values, then we'll think differently. So that's all I want to leave with you.
Thank you, Eric. Now, what are the things that make a nation? The things that make a nation, firstly, is sense of shared values, right? As Eric pointed out. A sense of shared values, maybe a commonality of race. The Japanese are a nation because they are Japanese. They've been isolated on an island for centuries, and they think Japanese, they speak Japanese, they can't imagine not being a Japanese. Well, the British to a certain extent, right? But Israelis are a nation because they have this shared sense of purpose. You may be a European Jew, an African Jew, a Jew from anywhere else, but you come to Israel to build Israel, because it is the land promised you. This is the land that God promised you. So there's that sense of purpose. Maybe the Americans have a sense of purpose. They have inspiring stories about their forefathers who came from across on the Mayflower to escape oppression. They had an ideal. There's this inscription on the foot of the Statue of Liberty. Give me your poor, your huddled masses striving to breathe free. You come here and you hope that you can make a better life. Here in Singapore, what is our value? I mean, I can imagine our present Prime Minister saying, no, Give me your billionaires, your money, your GST and more. Bring them to me. Because when he said that we already have what, 10 or 12 billionaires here and he's hoping to attract 2 or 3 more because what they can do to the economy, I hardly feel that that is an inspiring message to unite the people to say, come, let's all be Singaporeans. Whereas you go to the Indians, you know, when Nehru declared independence, all he said is, all of you must remember the spirit of Chitta. And all the Indians suddenly remembered, our Indian friend here, you know what's the spirit of Chitta? That when all the widows who found that men folk had died in battle, that they refused to live under oppression, they refused to live under the conqueror, and the whole lot, hundreds of them, just immolated themselves. So there's this united spirit. I ask you this, I put this question to all of you in this room. Is there one thing that you can say that gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling inside here? Whereas if you talk to an American, it's a Gettysburg Address. You talk to the Israelis, they have something else. So can you please somebody come up with a suggestion? What makes you say that I am proud to be Singaporean?
The Israelis did not survive. Even though they have a very strong sense of cohesiveness, they may not survive. The patriotism will be very strong, but they will be overcome.
Exactly.
So, the thing is, I just like to know, what makes you think that we cannot survive? What are the dangers that, I'm very naive, you think will make us be swallowed up?
I did not say in this book that we cannot survive. Maybe you've got no choice, to carry on. But if we had an option, I'm saying in this book, if we had an option to become bigger, would we take the option? That is what this book is about. Yes, a certain gentleman who like to tell you to teach you. I was wondering about him, about why so early in his political career, when he was on the campaign trail. Okay, he won by walkover and no campaign. But why so early in his political career? He wants to talk about the Lanfang Republic. How many of you here have heard about the Lanfang Republic? Anyone here knows what's the Lanfang Republic? So why was he talking about something which nobody seems to know anything about? And he was spending so much time talking about the Lanfang until somebody said Neil. Anyway, but later on we learned that what was getting at him. Lanfang was a republic and it was run by Chinese and it occupied Kalimantan. At one time it occupied the largest part of Borneo. How come nobody knows anything about Lanfang? Disappeared like that. Right? Because when the Dutch started to expand into Indonesia and started to conquer Kalimantan, the Lanfang people were outgunned. They are Chinese. They went to ask the emperor for help. The emperor got problems of his own back in China. And yes, the Lanfang normally sent gifts to him every year on Chinese New Year and on his birthday, but really they were not economically important to him. So he stood by and let the Dutch wipe them out. Well, we don't know much about the history of Lanfang except that it was big because the Dutch didn't keep records of daily life there. The Dutch kept records of how many soldiers they used, how much casualties they suffered, how many goods they seized, and they said, hey, we seized a lot. Now why did Lanfang go under? And that's what concerned Tan Tun Seng. Lanfang went under because it was not relevant to anybody else. So, okay, at the moment, maybe we are relevant to ourselves. But my book is speculating on, can we be relevant to anyone else? If we sell out to someone, and someone pays a lot of money here and builds his government things here, would he have a state to defend us? And can he do a better job than we can? These are just questions, hypothetical questions. But let's think it over. Because you say Israel may not survive. Well, Crimea, Mr. Shanmugam just talked about Crimea. You know what happened there. So, what are the options for Singapore? Anybody's guess? Right.
Any more questions?
Well, my name is Abraham Muhlenberg.
Hi.
I arrived in Singapore in 1972. I worked here for a number of years, then left Singapore, having married a Singapore girl, with whom I will shortly be celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary. But I've been in and out of Singapore. The only point I want to make with this is that I'm not really looking at Singapore totally from the outside. I feel a certain connection. I have great admiration for what Singapore has achieved over the last 40 years. The suggestion or the possible option was raised by the gentleman there that the US might be having a potential interest to buy Singapore. After all, the US wants to provide a counterweight in the Pacific basin to China. But I would think when we would come to the point where Singapore would have to decide, do we join a larger entity and at what price? Now, having worked for the Dutch bank, which was eventually taken over in a hostile bid, I think when it comes to the bottom line, people will go to the highest bidder. So if the US would be one of the bidders, there might be other bidders, and then I'm thinking of China.
Yeah.
So I think there's an interesting dilemma there. Which way would Singaporeans be prepared to go, based maybe on sentiment, on economic reasoning, and on bottom line for themselves?
Thank you. Thank you. This question has been explored in the book, in the final chapter, or no, in the penultimate chapter. Singapore is 75% Chinese. Does being Chinese automatically make you want to join China? And if the money is better, what the Singaporeans feel? I'm not going to spoil it by telling you what I have come to in chapter 29. But this question is explored in the book. How are we going to survive? What are we going to do with our... should we just take the most money? Or should we just call a halt to the bidding at a certain level? And or in a realistic situation, as you say, you're talking about real politics here and hostility overs. In a real situation, if there are various parties coming with guns, are we going to say choose the one that we think is going to give us the best deal or best ensure our safety? That's what this book is about. So I think I will not answer your question right here and now. You'll find it in chapter 29.
Maybe to elaborate a little bit, when people come bearing gifts, I think we are more welcoming. When they come bearing guns, I think the sense of nationalism and defense will come up even more. So I think the issue that's being explored here is that if a friendly party comes bearing gifts, would you sell Singapore? And that's what this book explores, right? It is not a hostile takeover. I mean, every time somebody wants to give you money, of course, it's a friend, right? So it's not a hostile takeover.
Yeah. Hopang, may I just interrupt here? At this point in time, if you were to hold a referendum in Ukraine and tell those fellows that each one of you will pay $1,000 each, Ukrainian pay the USA to become the 51st state. Just make a guess, what do you think the outcome will be?
But it's a great question.
A question from me. We had discussed this book 2018 sometime back, well over a year ago. Many of you will recall that in I think it was March last year or April, March and April last year, our Prime Minister made some, what I thought was some enigmatic comment. Like he was saying, he was criticizing the US President for using the word Asian pivot. He said that the term pivot means you turn around, you come here, you turn around, and you go back home. Right? And he used the words permanent, implacable. I don't know what permanent, but I recall the words implacable presence in this part of the world. What did he mean by that? I still don't have an answer to that. Perhaps if you have an answer, that would be good. The second part was prior to his visit to the USA, and in fact during the visit as well with President Obama, he said, well, they both reassured the close relationship between the two countries. Right? But there were words to the effect that we need to become closer. We will welcome becoming closer with the USA. What do you mean by that? I mean, it's like a man and a woman have already been dating for a long time, and the woman says, we need to be a lot closer. What did she mean by that? There was no answer. So, all the good people, yeah, those articles, I'm sure. What would have been on the minds of a Prime Minister?
Motherhood statement. Feel good.
Any other questions?
The question is an answer. So,
Oh, this question is an answer.
yeah, like for anybody.
Anyone wants to attempt an answer? No? Anything else? Any other questions? Anyone?
Well, yeah, just one. Actually, when I just arrived 4 weeks ago here, I studied political science, and well, giving this idea, it's like, well, really shocking. When Victor first told me, it was like, well, really shocking to sell your country. I'm now, well, I'm Catalan, you know, like proud, and trying to sell the nationality. This it's quite weird. Well, I think this Singapore did a great job here to build up this. So I think you don't need any help from the United States to build something like that. But yeah, what I would say is this. Well, first, Singapore reminds me a little bit with Swiss. This, I think, if a war, hypothetical war here in the zone explodes, I think nobody will invite Singapore because of the money. Well, with my colleagues in the embassy, you know, well, we think that if a war explodes here, Singapore would not invite because of the money, the great money here you have, and maybe it's like Swiss, you know, like they don't need. And my question is, what about United Nations? It can be safe a way to not sell your country and
Okay. Two gentlemen have actually answered the question. Of course, Mr. Shanmugam, our foreign minister, who was just on screen, and he answered it on screen. He said treaties are no use unless they can be enforced. Right? The other gentleman is Mr. Kishore Mahbubani. In his book, the very recently launched book, where he says that it was in the interest of the great powers to keep the UN weak, and the UN is weak. He doesn't have. He should know. Kishore is a very experienced diplomat for Singapore. So I don't think we can depend on UN sanctions or UN security forces to keep us safe. Now, I know my good friend from Zebi from Catalan. Catalan and Spain have their differences, and Switzerland has managed to survive as an independent sovereign nation in the middle of Europe, with intention to insult all our neighboring countries equally. I say that Europe is a much more civilized place than, or has older civilizations than this part of the world. Just very recently, in fact, just today's newspaper, you're finding that there's a protest against two gentlemen who are dressed up as Mr. Usman and Mr. Harun. And who are Usman and Harun? If they were Indonesian infiltrators who came here to bomb Singapore. Okay? So it was not very long ago. So this part of the world is a lot less friendly than Europe. I don't imagine that this novel of mine could have any relevance to Switzerland or any relevance to maybe Basque in France or Spain, you know, Spain, yeah, or to Yucatan. So, but it would certainly have relevance to people closer to the Soviet border. It would certainly have relevance to Cambodians. Maybe not to Vietnamese because there are too many old scars of the war. So it's for that reason that I said this novel is relevant to this part of the world and maybe to you as from a safer part of the world, you may not understand some of the fears that provoked Victor and myself to write this book. Okay?
Any more questions? Some? Yeah? Oh, okay. Yes? Oh. Right. Any more? Last question. Yes.
We are here talking about survivability.
Yes.
Whether selling ourselves to a big power would ensure our survivability. But if I got a couple of millions in my pocket, I will leave this place. So in fact, selling is the beginning of our demise. Okay. Now, having said that, if you go back to history where the Zionist movement started, the older generation of the diaspora were against the Zionist movement because they believed it would be propagating and they were proven right. Now, Israel is in a perpetual state of defending itself. So, my question is, my view is, my thinking is that by selling, you might even hasten our demise and not our survivability. So, my question is this the right method, selling, or there are other solutions? That, I don't know, I've not read the full book, whether it was ever discussed, maybe peripherally, that the Chinese ever say, a good neighbor is better than a distant relative. So,
Okay, thank you for reminding us that a good neighbor is better than a distant relative. I think you have to ask yourself this question. How good do you think our neighbors are?
It's how good we are.
Okay.
No.
Okay, Becky, I take your point. But did I explore other alternatives in the book? Maybe not seriously. But the important point is, this book is about possibilities. It's about to set your thinking. And if you have an escape route for the people, not for the country, if the people survive, then that to me is more important than if the country survives. The other thing is, if you sell to a superpower, it could be China, it could be the US, and they have a base here. The prognosis of this book is that there will be a base here. Which of the countries in this region would try to take on a superpower? The balance of power is a lot different between Arabs and some Israelis and some Arabs around them than between a real superpower and the neighboring ASEAN nations. So I think if a superpower does establish itself here, I don't think anybody in ASEAN would want to try. Yeah.
can I can we define the word soul in inverted commas? What do you mean by sell? You sell economically, you sell by changing your values, your perspective of your neighbors. That is the question I'm going to ask.
Okay.
The word soul, sell, in inverted commas, not in the way we talk in commerce.
It's defined in the book that other nations, some other nations might want to make an offer for all the public assets of Singapore, and how to ensure yes vote is the ultimate vote buying exercise. To suggest to, or rather not to suggest, to more or less breathe down the neck of the Singapore government that the money from the sale should be distributed to all the citizens. After all, rightly, the citizens own the country, right? Because if you were to approach the powers that be and say, are you prepared to cede this country? The same thing will happen as to any management buyout, to any hostile takeover. The managers are doing quite well. Our politicians are the best paid in the world. Do you think that they will say, yes, let's instead of being a prime minister, I should become just a senator or become a councillor? Do you think they will say that? And I mean, Obama only gets $500,000 a year, man. Sian Lung gets about 5 times as much. So for that, my concept of sell is more or less to say that private wealth remains in private hands, but the sovereignty of the state passes to someone else. And over a long transition period like China, one country, two systems. So that's what we define as sell.
Why sell when you can lease?
Hey Paul, our good professor of economics, you should be able to yeah.
I think that could be the second book. Okay. Any other questions? I would suggest buy the book. I mean, not because we because really the arguments that are extended in the book I think will cause us to do some deep thinking.
Ideas.
Yeah, in terms of ideas and in terms of what constitutes a nation. Why is it, I always ask myself, why is it that some friends that I have are very angry with me for even suggesting this, whereas others, he choose straight away and say, I want to sell and move. Why? What is it that make these two different responses, you know? Yeah, we're all brought up in the same country, right? And I think in the answers, in seeking the answers to these questions, I think we may finally find out what Singapore really is all about. Yeah. Okay, maybe we sort of, we still have time.
Oh,
there's a question? Yes.
Yes, Leslie.
Busan knew me since I was a small boy. So he still call me small boy. To help Chusan, I have actually collected a few orders for the book. So now I'm also responsible for after sales of the book. So I would like to ask Chusan about his refund policy for the book.
Okay, that's the treasurer of the Singapore Motorsports Association down there, and next to him is the president of the Motorsports Association. and I can just turn around the question the way I do as a motor dealer. Sorry, I'm only dealer, I'm only agent. This is the principal down here, he's the publisher.
That's kidding.
But I think this is really a serious book because it should help us, even though it's told in the form of a story or a novel, you know, it raises questions of what really is our identity. What is the Singapore identity? Do we stand by it? Do we just, I mean, it's easy to resist when there's an enemy, you know, coming at you with a firearm or with a knife or that. But when they come at you with a weapon that, or with something that attracts you, you know, money, will we still stand our ground? And those are the questions. And this is really what defines us as a nation. Okay. Yes, sorry.
Yes, Teng Lip, Mr. President of the SMSA. Yes.
I have a question for you. I mean, we always, during the discussion, we always assume that whoever is interested to buy over Singapore is somebody from outside.
Yes.
You know, but I don't know, in your book, you actually also look at what about a group of rich Singaporeans, I won't mention who, right? Rich enough
to buy over Singapore and make it private.
Privatize the company. It's an interesting
Singapore Inc. is a listed company, right?
Yes, yes.
You can always release it and make it private.
That is a fascinating question.
That'll be
That's going to be the next book. You're going to sit down with me as I sat down with Victor and you're going to tell me the story about it.
Well, maybe this thing about making it private, because it's not just about money, it's also about survivability, right? If a big superpower comes and buys away, and you know that you are you are safe, versus somebody, well, you may be very rich, you can buy over the country, offer everybody $1 million, which is what this book is saying, that everybody actually, and the figures are there, you know. I think the people who work behind the book, they actually worked out the figures, and these figures are realistic. Every individual gets $1 million. Of course, by the time the book ends, everyone gets $1.5 million. Right? But you know, you can have that, but will you have the ability to spend that money? Right? You say, okay, you buy over the country, individuals buy over the country, and then do what with it? Because if everybody have that kind of money, they run away, they disappear.
No, there's also an issue of, it's more an issue of survivability as a person. If you got $1 million, you need to go and buy citizenship somewhere else. And the places that offer you citizenship for 200,000, 300,000 are not places you want to live in. The places that you want to live in, the citizenship costs 4-5 million, so you don't have enough. So this issue of whether or not Singapore can be taken private is, shall I say, not really the subject of the book. The subject of the book is how are we going to survive this country? How we're not going to be blasted off the face of this earth, or have troops come in like they did into Chechnya, into Crimea, and just suddenly decide, no need to talk about selling, no need to talk about buying, I just want to take. How can we guarantee that? That's what the book's about. Yes, sir.
Do you imagine that somebody, instead of turning west, turns south and crash in Jurong? I mean,
well, there are a lot of theories about why that is way.
Was it on the way south and going west?
That's the reason why the center of
wait, the latest news I heard at about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock on the computer, was that actually it may have crashed in the Andaman Sea, but it could have washed all the way to the South Indian Ocean. So it actually turned west, but it dropped off in Andaman, somewhere off the island, but because of ocean currents and it's been almost 2 weeks already, it could have washed all the way down to Perth. So, what else?
No, my question was tongue in cheek too.
No, but
survivability, they were so vulnerable.
Yeah. No, but there was also one theory put forward that the captain had an emergency, and like all good captains, he heads for the first runway that he thinks he can take his plane. The nearest runway that can take his plane is Langkawi. So that he headed for Langkawi, but somehow or other he was unable to fly the plane, and after he turned, and it carried on straight and landed in the Andaman Sea. Yes, Betty?
This was actually written by a
pilot,
pilot with 20 years of experience,
Yeah.
flying Canadian Airlines, so it's not one of those speculative, That one has a lot of factual...
Right.
Okay, we can discuss this afterwards. This is about whether we want to sell Singapore. Yeah, but okay, I mean maybe we still have some time to buy the book and talk to each other, get him to sign, discuss among yourselves whether you want to sell Singapore for $1.5 million in the book.
It's not so much the money, it's whether you want to secure your future.
I was brought up on money. Money secures my future. Yeah. So if there